Well, welcome to this video series on mechanic lien systems. I'm really excited about this project because I think a mechanic lien is one of the best tools that a construction company can use to collect its money. Now, in this video series, we're going to go over the 5 simple steps that you can use to create a very simple but effective mechanic lien system that you can use in your company. So let me give you an example of why I think mechanic lien systems are so important. I've got a small construction client who does wonderful work. I consider him a craftsman. The problem is he doesn't always collect his money, and sometimes he leaves money on the table. And obviously that's not good for a construction company. Now, recently my client was hired by a company to remodel a commercial building. Now, this was the perfect dream job for my client. He was able to bring the job in on time, on budget, with a happy customer. The customer loved the work, was ecstatic about the work, paid every bill on time. There was never a problem on this job. We get down to the final payment, and a substantial amount of money is owed to my client for this final payment, for the final payment and the retainage. We get down, and about that time, the pandemic hit, and everybody was shut down, and my client wasn't paid. Now, this can be devastating to a small construction company. So were we able to do anything to help our client? Well, stay tuned, and I'll tell you what happened at the end. So let's talk about some definitions. What exactly is a mechanic lien? Well, generally, when a contractor, and when I say contractor, I'm referring to a general contractor or a subcontractor or a supplier who improves real property and is not paid by the owner, can file a mechanic lien against the property. They can go in and ask the court to enter an order that they're entitled to their money, and the court will order that the property be sold to pay the bill. I call that a superpower because very few industries have the power to go in and ask a court to sell someone's property to pay their bill. And again, I think that's a superpower. So why do I think that mechanic lien systems are important? Well, I think all businesses should have systems in their business, whether you're a construction company, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a clothing store, whatever the business, I believe that you should systemize your business. And all that means simply is to write down the processes that you use to do your business. Now, why is it important for a mechanic lien system? Well, very simply, it's to help you collect your money. And by having the right system in place, you can consistently, over time, collect more money. Now, the reason I like systems is because it helps manage risk. And as a contractor or supplier, you face more risk than most people will ever face. And if you take all of those risks, I think you can really boil it down to 2 main risks: the risk of not getting paid and the risk of getting sued. If you can manage those 2 risks, you're going to be way ahead. And so a system is important to help you manage those risks. So what exactly does a system look like? Well, again, it's simply just a written system of documenting the processes in your company. Some define it as a regular method or way of doing something over and over that allows you to achieve consistent results to avoid or minimize risk. But most importantly, it's not subject to interpretation or change and is not dependent on the personality using the system. Now, this is extremely important. A written system is something that you do over and over in a particular way. It's important not to have that team member interpret that system or to change it based on their own personality. Now, let me give you an example. I have a client who had a office manager that worked for him for about 20 years. And during that time, this office manager ran the company brilliantly from a business standpoint. After about 20 years, the office manager retired. And the thing is, my client didn't have any of the processes written down. And that employee left with all of the information. So as a result, my client didn't have any processes. He had to go back and recreate everything. He had to sit down and write out what he wanted the new employee to do, the new bookkeeper or office manager to do. That took time, created aggravation, inconvenience, and it was inefficient. So we always want to try to write down everything that we want done in our business. in writing on paper, and make sure that it's not subject to interpretation, that the employee or the team member follows that written system the way you have it prepared. And that way you can put whoever you want in that position anytime, and you will have a consistent result over and over and over. Now, I got this idea about written systems from watching airline pilots. If you've ever been in an airplane and watched the pilot with his pre-flight checklist, that is basically a system. He has a checklist of everything that he has to go over to make sure that that plane flies safely. Now, that pilot has probably been up in the air thousands of hours, and he probably knows everything that he needs to do. So why does he need a written system? Quite simply, for consistency. If he has a written system, he is guaranteed that he will not forget a step. That makes everybody safer. It makes the results more consistent, more achievable, and you get a better result. Now, I love this illustration here because I think it illustrates a construction company and the risks that it sees every day. The young man on the wire, to me, represents a construction company. And every day he has to deal with all kinds of risks, which I consider the alligators. But a good written system will allow that construction company to have a safety net under it. So if it does miss a step, then you have a system in place that will catch you and save your company. Now, let's talk about the rules. It's very important to understand the mechanic lean rules. Now, in Oklahoma, luckily, we have very simple rules to follow. If we were in Texas, it would be much more complicated and we have a different conversation. But in Oklahoma, very simply, a contractor, and when I say contractor, I'm talking about a contractor who has a contract directly with the owner. That contractor has 4 months of, has to follow mechanic lean within 4 months of its last day of work. And we're going to spend a lot of time going over what the last day of work means. But he has 4 months to follow that mechanic lean. If you're a subcontractor, and when I mean subcontractor, I mean someone who does not have a contract directly with the owner, that subcontractor generally has to send a pre-lien notice within 75 days of the last day of work. And we're going to get into which subcontractor has to send the pre-lien notice. Not everyone has to send it, but just remember that it has to be sent within 75 days. And a subcontractor has to file a mechanic lien within 90 days of the last day of work. So, and this is an interesting thing, and I don't know why the Oklahoma legislature did this, but a contractor has to file the mechanic lien within 4 months of its last day of work. The subcontractor has to file it within 90 days, not 3 months. And why the Oklahoma legislature made the contractor time limit in months and the subcontractor in days, I don't know. You would think it would be 4 months and 3 months, or 120 days and 90 days. In any event, be sure and remember that for a general contractor, it has to be 4 months, and a subcontractor, 90 days. So what does a great mechanic lien system look like? Well, the one that we've developed and that we've used successfully for years has 5 parts, very simple parts. The first part is to determine whether you're even entitled to a mechanic lien. Not everybody is entitled to a mechanic lien, so it's important to determine whether your work qualifies for a mechanic lien. Once you do that, the second part is to find the relevant information. And when I say relevant information, I mean relevant and accurate information. This is the most important part of your system. If you don't get relevant, accurate information down correctly, everything else falls apart. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about what is relevant and accurate information and where to get it. The third part is to prepare and serve the correct pre-lien notice if you're a subcontractor who has to send one. The fourth step is to prepare and file the mechanic lien statement. And we'll spend some time talking about what is required for the mechanic lien system, where you file it, what it looks like. And then the fifth and final step is to file the foreclosure action to ask the court to award you a judgment and foreclose your lien on the property and sell it for payment. Now, obviously, the fifth step is where I would like for you to talk to your lawyer and let him or her know what you're doing and let them assist you in this. That's an important part. And just to be clear, I want to be clear. I recommend that a lawyer be involved in this entire process. But through this education and through having the right system in place, it will make the process that much easier. So on our next video, we're going to talk about this first part of how to determine whether you're entitled to a mechanic lien. And I look forward to it. Oh, by the way, let me tell you what happened to my client. We were able to work with this client before this non-payment happened. We were able to put in some systems in place. We were able to determine that he was entitled to the mechanic lien. We were able to help him find the relevant information. We helped him prepare the mechanic lien and file it. And before we were required or forced to file the lawsuit, the customer came up and said, "Here's your money." My guess is the customer realized that he really didn't have a defense to this. We had a system in place that took care of all the requirements, and my client was paid. So in that instant, we had a good result. So I look forward to seeing you on the next video.